pages. So let's see if I can remember. I wrote it down if I can read my notes. I think it's 1,000. We will not be talking about pages 1,050 to 1,051. I wrote it down so we can real or wrong. Let me take a look. It's 1,010 to 1,031 are good. Okay. And then, let's see. Oh, I've got paper clips.
Have you guys
so about 1,032 through, I think, there's some black type things for the next several pages, about 1,049. So 32 to 49 are you don't have to worry about. And then we'll see that's probably, 32 is probably as far as I'm likely to get today. And then all of the next chapter, Sleep and Exercise, which is only around 15 pages, we will cover. And I think there's a few more pages that I'll tell you later that you'll be able to skip in this chapter, but I'll tell you that our next visit. Okay. Okay. So posture. When I was young, my parents were always telling me to sit up straight, up and hold my shoulders up and suck in my belly. And I thought it was just so you would present yourself positively, that you would look like you were attentive and paying attention, and that was just the way they expected their children to walk around and sit at the dinner table. And I think that's actually where they were coming from, but I have since realized that our posture actually makes an impact on health. When you hold your shoulders up, that gives your lungs more room to expand. You can take deeper breaths. Don't know about sucking in your belly, but holding, actually I do, because if we hold our abdominal muscles taut, they're a little bit stronger. If you get in the habit of doing that pretty much all the time, it benefits your back, and you tend to have less back pain as you age. So there are actual, there are respiratory and benefits to standing up straight, to getting good lung expansion, and having stronger abdominals from holding them in. Improves your spine health, and also decreases the back pain and possibly some knee problems later on.
Mrs. Martinez?
Yes.
Is there any chance a student mic is on either in Tonquah or there? Because we're getting additional noise besides your voice.
Okay, I think it was me. I just turned off. Thank you for reminding me.
Oh, you bet. That's much better. Thank you.
And do you have slides for us? Yeah. I will turn the slides on. I think I should probably look into it. I haven't started talking about that.
Martinez,
One more thing. Yes.
can you repeat the over?
Okay, I'll repeat the pages that they don't need to go over. I think that would be the simplest thing to do. Page 1032 through 1049. Those are pages you do not need to worry about in this chapter.
Did you turn on lecture temperature?
And I do have my lecture temperature blinking at me, so that indicates it's supposed to be working. I know sometimes the sound, even though the visual is there, sometimes the sound is not. Everything looks like it's plugged in as tight as it can be. It's almost like we have to pray on this lecture capture that it works or it doesn't work. Okay. So our posture is very important for us, and much more so than I had any idea for many years of my life. And there are lots of negative consequences to having a sedentary lifestyle, which is what our chapter kind of begins with, about all of the negatives. It talks about the Healthy People Project of 2020 that came out from our government trying to get all of us to exercise more. And
Ms. Martinez,
yes.
did you mean to have your slides up?
Well, not really, but since it's bothering everybody, I will go ahead and do it. There. Right there. Let's see. Now I do need to have my slides up, but I'm not. So let's see what happens. Desktop computer. Give that a second. See what happens.
Addie didn't take her test today, so we won't get all the points back today.
Can you see them now?
She had to go to the doctor.
Yes. Right.
Yes, thank you.
You are very welcome. So, in your book, I think it's page 1011. Down there, there's this big red sign that says normal movement and what it takes to have normal movement. So there are 4 pieces that are, I believe, considered pretty important. Maybe it's 3.
Ms. Martinez,
Yeah.
I am not sure that there's anything you can do, but in Tonkawa, we are seeing Stillwater's classroom.
I can call the control room and see if there's anything she can do. Well, can you? Let me call the control room.
Mrs. Head, do you have the old Crestron or the new one? If you have the old one, go down to the switch view button and switch it until you see her slide up there on your big screen. If there's a blue switch view button down there, use it.
Yes. Are you having any luck, Mrs. Head?
I am now.
Oh, great. Wonderful. So, class, if you'll asterisk this slide, the 4 basic elements of movement, it will benefit you in the future. We'll probably hear of it again. And so body alignment is basically our posture, maintaining good alignment, and I'm not going to go into that center of gravity so much and the line of gravity and that sort of thing. Joint mobility is joint mobility. We may talk about that a little bit more. Our balance. Balance is something most of us, I guess, probably take for granted, although you think about people at each end of their lifespan. Babies fall down all the time. They don't have the greatest control of their movements, and they haven't learned balance so much. Older people have poor balance often as well. Pregnant women have some problems sometimes with balance and fall more than non-pregnant women, particularly in that last trimester, because their center of gravity changes. But balance, words in your Merck's dictionary that have to do with balance are stability, and also equilibrium. So our equilibrium, we think about that having to do a lot with our inner ear, the piece of the inner ear that helps us know that we're upright and in a balanced position that we're not likely to keel over. And as far as what part of the inner ear that involves, we don't need to go into that in depth, just that it's dependent upon our inner ear. So our body, if we want to have the basic elements of movement, so we have the balance and then coordinated movements. And The alignment and posture talks about the line of gravity in the center and the basic support, but we're not really, as I said, particularly going to get into that. Those of you who are from 20 to 40 years of age, since we're talking about adults, probably have no real limitations on any of these four things necessarily. You should be, other than pregnant women, you should be in pretty good shape as far as your four basic elements of movement. However, over age 40, most of us start to slip just a little bit. It's not terribly noticeable. Maybe we have less muscle tone. We spend more time in a more sedentary lifestyle, for one thing. And because of that, mostly because of that, our bone density tends to decrease slightly. The more weight-bearing exercise we get, the stronger our bones are. So if I spend too much time sitting in my office, working on lectures or grading papers or whatever I'm doing that's just sitting, I'm going to lose muscle tone and bone density. My joints are also going to lose flexibility, and my bone mass will have decreased somewhat. It'll be slight, but it's there. The thing we know about females more than males is that this happens, the bone mass decrease happens at a faster rate in women. The term we use is osteoporosis as that bone density decreases. It happens to men too. Men develop osteoporosis, but women, some kind of relationship to estrogen or something, seem to get it a lot more so. And the women who are at most risk are slightly built women. Women of Asian descent are particularly prone to osteoporosis. Maybe smaller frames, and I don't know if it's diet related or not. But also some things that happen, as it says there, our joints become a little less flexible because we don't tend to work them as much. Especially those who do not stretch, who have not built it into their daily routine to stretch, our reaction times slow just a little bit. Ball players tend to retire, professional athletes, and when they get around the age of 40, they find out that they are a step slower, maybe reacting to something, and can not run quite as fast, but it's not just that they can't run as fast, it's that they can't. When the ball comes off the bat, they do not react as quickly, they do not perceive which way it's going and take off instantaneously like they might have been able to do 2 years before. So reaction time's a little slow. That means you're probably not quite as good a driver as you used to be. I don't know what age race car drivers retire, but I hope when their reaction time's slow, they kind of start thinking about doing something else for a living too. So osteoporosis. Osteoporosis is calcium leaks out of your bones. If you're a female, you're at higher risk. If you smoke, that bumps you up considerably more so. And if you're over 60, so if you're a female over 60 who smokes, you've probably got brittle bones. And it's interesting because I have no idea what smoking does to cause that calcium to leave your bones. And I know a lot of you, from having talked to you after the test and lectures and things, you want to know the why. So please don't email me and ask me what smoking does exactly that causes that calcium to leave your bones, because I don't know. You will have to ask Mr. Google, I guess. But people with osteoporosis, their bones are more brittle. They break more easily. When you look at them on x-rays, you can see the bone looks a little darker because strong bone shows up as light, and fragile bone shows up with, you can see a little bit of the porous sacs, if you will. So people with osteoporosis get fractures sometimes that they didn't fall, they weren't in a car wreck. They get compression fractures in their spine is one they're at high risk for, and then they are much more likely to have a fracture from some sort of accident. And it doesn't have to be a big accident to cause a fracture. Also, those pathological fractures, those fractures where they say, you know, my back's just been hurting me a lot the last few months, and they end up getting an x-ray and they see a couple of compression fractures, and they can't assign it to a certain action that happened. It just happened. Another thing that you see as also that I want to move that slide for just a little bit. There's a table 44-1 that talks about types of joint movements. When I said joints lose their flexibility, we'll probably talk about this a little more later on, but I just want you to make note that that's an important table for you. We do need to learn the types of joint movements and probably have an activity to go with that later on as well. So our muscles, we have lots of different names for our muscles. There are muscles that are flexors. Flexor muscles help make movements that come toward your body. Like if you're eating and you have something on your fork and you bring it up toward your mouth, that's the flexing movement. Your flexor muscles are helping you do that. When you reach back down to get another bite, that's an extensor muscle. Your extensor muscles are helping you reach away from you. There are a lot of other names besides just those two. If a person is inactive, maybe someone is put into a medically induced coma after a car wreck. So they're put into a coma to protect their brain while some healing can take place. And they're not moving. No one performs range of motion on that person. They will tend to flex. They will curl up. If you lay in bed for a period of time, for several days, you tend to flex your knees pull up, your arms are generally pulled up, usually your spine's a little bit bent too, because your flexor muscles are stronger than your extensor muscles are. So they pull you into that flexed position. It's just kind of a natural thing that happens. And if you don't do anything to counteract that over time, maybe someone who's had a brain attack, or which we also call a stroke or a cerebral vascular event, the brain attack is kind of the trendy thing medical people are hoping will catch on. The layman's term that's been around forever is the stroke, and we're trying to, I guess, for whatever reason, get away from cerebral vascular accident. Maybe it just sounds too medical and it's too wordy. Same thing. So, someone who has had a massive CVA and they're lying in a bed, and people do not work with them regularly to stretch their muscles, they'll end up flexed, and if it goes on for months, they will become fixed in those positions. It sometimes takes surgery to open up that mobility again. And it's not just the muscles, the tendons and the ligaments get kind of frozen as well. So range of motion, I mentioned range of motion, is very, very important to maintain mobility for all of us. And there's a table here of all of the motions that we should be able to make and the type of motion, if we need to do hyperextension, if we need to do extension, eversion, inversion. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But range of motion, make sure that you can still do those movements. And like hyperextension of your neck. Now that's something I really go through the day, I don't look straight up or tip my head back very often. I guess if a plane goes by really low over me, I might tip my head up and look. But that's not a motion that I just make frequently through the day. So I could lose the ability to hyperextend my neck if I don't make a point of stretching and doing that. It's just not something that comes in handy that often. So this slide shows you some other things that can interfere with our alignment and our mobility. Is nutrition. Poorly nourished people just are more likely to have weak muscles. If you don't have enough intake of calcium and you don't get sunlight, then that increases your risk of osteoporosis. However, some people who take supplemental calcium, for 20 or 30 years, still get osteoporosis. The bones lose it faster than they can, or the bones kick it out faster than they can take it in. And they might even show in their body, in their blood, an adequate amount of calcium, but there's not an adequate amount of calcium in the bones. Obesity affects our posture, it affects our joint health, and our balance, depending on how we carry the weight. It can certainly stress our joints and make it much harder for us to be active. And we know obesity is a national problem in our country, and so we need to personal effort to combat obesity. What I see is a lot of people will say, I'm going to go on a diet and lose 25 pounds in the next 2 months. Well, gosh, that's not very realistic, really. It can be done, but, they'll go on a starvation diet, and then when they go off of the diet in the next 2 months, they gain 30 pounds. So, we call it yo-yo dieting. If you say, I'm going to start this year at the weight that I'm at, and my goal is to weigh 5 pounds less, 6 months from now. So while my birthday's in June, I'm going to try to lose about a pound a month. And you think, that's so trivial, what's that going to, you know what, it accomplishes a whole lot. Because you can lose a small amount of weight and improve your blood sugar and your energy levels. So, and plus, the thing most people do is put on a few pounds every year. So if you lose 5 pounds when you're 40, that's sort of like losing 10 because you didn't gain 5. So not only did you not gain 5, but you lost 5. So small amounts, small goals that are realistic, you tend not to yo-yo as much. And you can make lifestyle changes to maintain a 5-pound weight loss, and the next 6 months you may lose another 5 pounds. The personal values and attitudes, that's what we're really trying to change in our country a little bit, to say it's good to get out and get some exercise instead of just jumping in the car. And I think maybe Oregon is one of the, if it's not the healthiest state, it's one of the healthiest states in terms of longevity and less chronic diseases. California does pretty well because I think for California, a lot of it is climate. They have access to a lot of beaches. There are quite a few places where people can get out and bike and do some physical things that, and it's encouraged. I think I saw something about Loma Linda. Maybe Loma Linda, California is one of the places where people live the longest. But Oregon, I thought, well, it's probably too rainy there. I'm not sure how they got on the list, but they're there, so they must have the personal values and attitudes. And you know, you think about states where people try to be outdoors a lot. People like to hike. They might move to Colorado. So we need to try to help ourselves and our neighbors and our clients here in Oklahoma to change our values and our attitudes so that we incorporate a little more exercise. I know sometimes the most competitive thing I do all day is try to beat someone to the closest parking spot. You know, if I can beat Mrs. Highfield to the best parking spot, I rocked it, you know. Well, gee, actually, I didn't help myself if I did that. So, got to change my mentality a little bit. So. And I know some of you do those things too. Don't tell me you don't. I see you out there circling the purpose. So the external factors that we're talking about here are things like climate. If it's a nice climate, people are more likely to be active. You know, the hydration. What they're actually, when I was reading the book, I thought, hydration. What are we talking about? Everybody can get a drink of water. Well, I think that's supposed to say humidity. I need to check that a little bit. But people who live in very humid parts of the country tend not to get as much exercise as those who live in the more drier climates. And then finances. It has to do, I guess, with buying one of those really nice bikes or joining a nice gym. Some people, you know, that's the reason for not doing it is because, well, I can't really afford to and my neighborhood's not very safe. And there's some of that's legitimate, but the fact you don't need a fancy gym to get some exercise. One lady that wrote a book many years ago that she ended up losing about 50 pounds over the course of a couple of years, but she was embarrassed to go to a gym, so she walked around her house and up and down the stairs like 60 times a day. And she, you know, gradually built it up until she had her little route inside, and until she lost like 25 pounds, she wouldn't go out and exercise out publicly. But she actually, and it didn't sound like she had a huge house, but she worked those stairs into, you know, when a commercial came on, she got up and went up and down the stairs, or, you know, did jumping jacks or something. Okay. So types of exercise. You will need to know the difference in the types of exercise between the isotonic, the isometric, and isokinetic. So isotonic is what we tend to think of the most as running, walking, cycling, what we tend to think of most of the time when we're getting exercise. Isometric is tightening and releasing muscles without actually having to move. So people can do a lot of isometric exercises in bed. If they're bedridden for whatever reason, your book shows an example of someone with a rolled towel between their legs, and they're just holding it there, and then they're pushing their knees together and then apart, and tightening them and then letting them go. So they're not really, you know, moving around, but they're getting some exercise. And then isokinetics, the working out against resistance. Weight training is the one we think about a lot. Physical therapists use those exercise bands a lot for people who are trying to build up an injured joint or something. And then also the yoga or Tai Chi, where you tone and strengthen your muscles and do some breathing exercises, do quite a lot for your body. There's a lot of literature out there about being able to reduce blood pressure and to reduce depression and do a lot for mental health as well as physical health. If people who do yoga and or Tai Chi. They say that they have increased, their immune system is significantly increased. They've got higher levels of white blood cells and lymphocytes, so that they're better able to respond to illness. And they, both systolic and diastolic blood pressure goes down. Epinephrine and norepinephrine levels are reduced because those are hormones that cause more tension in our vessels, and that people also generally had better respiratory values who had practiced these exercises for long periods of time. And if you've tried, you know, when I watched people do yoga and things like that the first few times, I thought, oh gosh, that doesn't look like that's going to do anything for you. But they actually do. And we're learning more and more about the benefits of these types of exercises. So it's not something to dismiss. And then we talk about anaerobic or aerobic exercise. Aerobic, we take in more oxygen than we actually use. So that's like our jogging is a aerobic exercise. And anaerobic is more like what you usually have with weightlifting. You can also have anaerobic where you use up more oxygen than you take in. Weightlifting, I guess, and even in a short sprint, that can be considered anaerobic. So I hadn't thought about that. They used to talk about setting target heart rates, and it tells you the math, how to do that in your book. But now the trend seems to be more for a talk test, to tell people to get to where, to measure how healthy of a level of exercise they're going at, that they can still talk, but it's kind of a little difficult. And that's probably, they're probably around 60% of their maximum heart rate if they're at that level. So there's different ways of measuring that. So, benefits of exercise that we have really talked about, but I guess we didn't talk about improved circulation and reduction of stress. So musculoskeletal, that improves bone density, improving our joint health. Even for people with arthritis, they recommend that they exercise. And it used to be that people with arthritis tended not to move those joints that hurt. Now they're encouraged to do some gentle exercise to try to maintain as much mobility as they can of those joints. Anything we can do to reduce our stress, and exercise does help with that. Gastrointestinal system, exercise increases the tone, causes more peristalsis, and therefore reduces constipation. I think there's some literature, you know, colon cancer is one of the biggies here in the United States. And I think that people who are chronically constipated have a higher risk for colon cancer. So keeping your bowels moving, that's just one more reason to do that. Our metabolic systems, it improves our insulin resistance, our cholesterol, our blood sugar if we get some exercise. And as I said earlier, your immune system is improved. So there are also, I just put a few on that slide, but when you go through your book, what is really interesting to me, people, particularly who are bedfast, it was page 1024. It shows the kidney in an upright position, and then the kidney of someone who's reclining, laying there supine. And the urine tends to have a more difficult time getting out of the kidney. And also the blood flow is just slowed down, the process of moving through the particulate matter tends to stay in the kidney, and they tend to get more renal calculi or kidney stones. So that's the calcium in the urine is liquefied in an active person, but in an inactive person, it tends to develop kidney stones. Also, someone who lies in bed tends to have urinary stasis. We know that tends to cause more urinary tract infections. And if you think about this, it doesn't drain as well when we're lying down. That's, you get up in the morning, what's the first thing most of us do? We run to the bathroom and pee, because while we were sleeping at night, our bladder filled up. And if you spend 20 out of 24 hours in bed, that's a lot of time for urinary stasis and for infections to develop, because the whole idea, is that as we move more and we drink more, we void more often, and it flushes any infectious material out. The big thing we see, I think, over and over and over is in the lungs. The secretions tend to settle, and you see, if you've ever lived with someone who smoked a long time, they get up in the morning a lot of times and they start coughing, because the smokers cough. They get up in the morning and hack away for 15 or 20 or 30 minutes because they've had those secretions pooling in their lungs all night, and they have more secretions than we do. So it can also lead to atelectasis and pneumonia. Also, and this is shame on me because I do take a sleeping pill, but people who take sleeping pills, they often depress the cough reflex. So they tend to be, have what they call hypostatic pneumonia. If you don't have a good cough reflex, you're going to accumulate more secretions and tend to grow more infections in your lungs.
I think our video shut off. Yeah.
Oh, how far did I go?
Just now.
Just now.
I just saw a flash up there.
Okay. Well, that was a good time.